Independence Day. Very good, very good. Not really?
My air conditioner broke that day.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah.
Highly overrated, air conditioning. Especially, and it's still not fixed.
Well, it's not getting fixed. I'm getting another one because I didn't want to pay
Yeah,
$1 million when it's a fifth of or whatever. What
Sure.
they cost.
yeah. One of the guys I go to church with lives over here, Pruitt Heating and Air Conditioning, Dennis Pruitt in Buford.
I've heard of it.
Yeah, I go to church with him and his family, and this is a very busy time of year for them in the summertime, and early morning and very late at night. So I don't envy those guys whatsoever. Everybody else had a very uneventful Independence Day. Yeah? Anybody want to give an update on where they're at with their money without being specific about numbers? Anybody want to give an update on where you are with your money? Because I've got some questions for you here. Good? On track? Good. Anybody else? No? So a couple of my questions. Today is July 11th, 2021. About 6 months and 2 weeks away from, in fact, exactly 6 months and 2 weeks away from Christmas, if you want to look at it that way. But my question to you is, last month you had a budget. For some of you from this class, maybe your first budget that you did. So did you complete your budget? Did you follow it? Did you track it on a weekly basis to see where you're at? Did you look at the end to see what kind of actuals you had in comparison to what your plan was? Everybody? Anybody not necessarily fail at the numbers, but did you fail at the task? Did you do your budget? Did you follow it? I encourage you to do that because now we're 11 days into the month of July. We should be on our July budget. How many of us have our July budget prepared, working from it, tracking to it, using cash? Yeah. All right. I want to encourage you to be able to do it because here's the thing. You're going to get out of it what you put into it. We were just talking about the Bibles. And I think you were saying some acquaintance, work, or whatever, was talking about a debate between the different versions of the Bible. And he was saying it really doesn't matter if you don't read it. Same thing with your budget. Doesn't matter if you put one together if you don't follow it, if you don't do it. You need to be doing it to be successful. You want to have a plan to be able to do that. So everybody, if you haven't done your July budget, make sure you're doing that now. When you go back and you look at your June budget, the number at the end, what you had planned in income and your spending balanced down to zero, what happened at the end? Did you have money left over? Were you short? Did you have a lack of income or overspent? Got to get better in the month of July. But if you had leftovers, where would that go? Who?
The debt or savings?
Well, it depends on where you're at. If you're trying to get that emergency fund established, that's more to that emergency fund. If you're working aggressively to pay off that debt, that's more to debt. That smallest debt that you're working on, more there. If you're actually trying to do some investing that we'll be talking about tonight, that's more to go in your investment account as well. It's what's known as a profit. You had income, minus your expenses, you had money left. It's profit. Nobody wants to talk about profit in your household, but the truth is we should be doing that. Now we've got to apply it to where it works. If we're paying off debt, building our emergency fund, it's going to go there. If we're investing or paying down our house, going down that path, it's going to go in that direction. Okay? Any questions about that? Okay. I only had a few responses of those questions that I'd asked you about the debt. Okay? So I'm going to give you what those answers are here real quick, collectively. Okay? And when I give you these, I want somebody who will take this responsibility to get with this group in about 6 months to reassess these numbers. Don't jump up and down. Do you want to do it? I don't think he does. He's scared. He's scared. What's that?
I had to remember to do that.
Remember to do that. Mark it on you got an iPhone, don't you?
Yeah, Android.
Oh, forget it. Find somebody that's got a good phone here to do that. But tell Siri, hey, on December whatever date, remind me to get with the class and just get those numbers. You get it anonymously, put them together, right? Here's what it came up to with people that sent me. Overall non-mortgage debt, $35,492. Open credit cards, 21 credit cards. Outstanding mortgage balances, $232,600. Okay? Now, I know some of you give me some business numbers. I didn't put those numbers in there. This is strictly the personal side of this, okay, to look at this. I would encourage you to add those up on your own. The business side, you want to attack that as well, following the same principles that we're talking about here tonight. But again, those are the numbers for this, and I can write those down for whatever so that you got something to compare. Again, I have no idea who's what. I know you gave me that, but when I took the numbers off, I shredded all that information. So nothing gets confused in that whatsoever, okay? Any other questions from where we're at here tonight? No other questions. Everybody's doing good, right? Feel free if you've got questions, maybe it's a confidential thing, give me a call, email me. Hopefully you've got my information. I know I had that slide on at the beginning, but I can give you that information at the end of the evening as well if you'd like that. I normally carry a few cards and I don't have any in here with me today. Actually, to tell you the truth, it was getting ready to pour down rain, lightning and thunder, and I ran to the car to get out of here and make it here before I got soaking wet. So I was in a hurry and forgot a couple of things as well. Tonight we're talking about investing. I was wanting to see if anybody was listening there. Investing. Absolutely. Absolutely. Let me tell you up front, okay? I'm not a certified financial planner. I don't do that for a living, and quite frankly, don't want to do that. I would have more gray hairs than what I have actually now if I had any hair at all to do that. That's not what I am wired to do, okay? I have no desire to do that. I'm not an investment professional whatsoever. If you came up and asked me, hey, what about this stock tip or whatever, can you tell me about this? I can't. I wouldn't do that. Now, I might steal your idea and go look at it, research and invest in it, or run like I should stay away from it. But I can't and won't because that's just not what I do, all right, in making that. So anyways, I want to make sure that you knew that disclaimer before we got started here. Did everybody get a sheet? Anybody lacking? Okay. You look at this. If you were to look at that question, what does that make you think of? How long is your runway? Or what does your runway look like? What does it make you think of? Flying. What else? Not on days like today, obviously. What does it make you think of? Take off, but what else? Landing. So how long, the other question I would ask you, how long is your runway? We've got a variety of different ages in here. When you look at where you're at versus where you were, how long is your runway? How long are you able to achieve the things that you need to do to prepare you for retirement? I've got something, I laid that down, I want to keep it in my hand to share something with you there. But when you look at this, hopefully you look at this. Maybe we won't look at that. This will be fun. Anybody an expert on that stuff? I can run back there and do that if I need to. Let's see what happens. Oh well. Anyways, I got a picture. The next picture there is what we would call a nest egg. It's got some $100 bills, I think, if I'm not mistaken. $100 bills in it, and it's got an egg in it. If it came up on that, that's a good point because she transitioned some of this to, there we go. Yeah, the golden egg there. Look at that. Isn't that a pretty picture? I stole that, so if you like it, good. If you don't, that's fine too. But the point is, when you look at that, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to prepare for retirement in the future. Trying to prepare and make that stuff happen for us. How long is your runway to prepare to do that? Several years ago, in fact, I think I was in college, so it's been about 35, 40 years ago. My dad used to talk like that. I was going to school at the University of Louisville, and my parents lived in Cynthiana, Kentucky, and between those two locations was Lexington, Kentucky, where you've heard of, and the capital of Kentucky, Frankfort. And there were some guys in a big Delta jet, if I'm not mistaken, one of those big, long MD-80s, MD-88. I only know them because I used to work for General Electric Aircraft Engines. I'm not a professional in any of that stuff. But they, for whatever reason, looked at the wrong airport. And they landed that big jet in Frankfort, Kentucky's airport, which was just a common general aviation airport. They got it down, they got it landed, but then they couldn't get it back out without flying out pretty much on empty, just enough to get them over to Lexington. The point is they came at the wrong runway. They're very fortunate they didn't crash in that thing. The question is, how long is my runway? How long do I have to be able to do some of these things? We've been talking about having a budget and getting out of debt and making sure you're prepared for emergencies. The next step in that process is to make sure as you get past that emergency fund being completely filled, is that you're investing for your future, letting your money work for you instead of working against you. I just clicked that, so maybe it's working, okay? Remember that last saying that we had right at the end of the last class there? I don't want you to think that I'm duplicating slides, but I am, because I wanted you to see this. The money that we earn is a penalty, or it says a reward. The money that we pay in interest is a penalty. Interest that we earn is a reward. Interest that we pay is a penalty. Unfortunately today, and I'm going to show you some numbers here in just a minute, most people are in the business of paying a penalty as opposed to earning a reward. We've got it backwards. Most people, when they invest in the stock market, they do because of emotions. Things are going well in the stock market, and so they buy when it's high. Things go bad, they buy when, or sell when it's low, just the opposite of what we should be doing, investing when it's on sale and selling when it's high, all right? We don't do that. We deal with emotions. We go down here and look at this. I'm telling you today, again, it's time for a change. We've been doing all this stuff. We keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, and you know what that definition of insanity is. We're expecting different results, and it doesn't change. It doesn't change. The big guys are winning in the stock market, and the common people who should be doing things differently are just giving them the money. Here's some things I want you to see when I say we're doing it wrong. Do you realize that the average 401k balance in the United States of America, roughly $121,000? The average 401k balance. From people, young people, probably 20 years old, all the way up to those as old as they have a 401k. And we'll talk about a 401k and all those things here in just a minute. When you look at age groups, and I just picked these older age groups because, quite frankly, some of those younger age groups are just starting to ramp up in those savings. But when you get into that 40 to 49, that 50 to 59, you go a little bit more than that, you would expect there to be more money in there, correct? Average balance, 40 to 49 age bracket, $120,800. You go up another decade in age, $203,000. Okay? Anybody know who Charles Givens is? Excuse me, Charles Payne. Charles Payne, Fox Business analyst. He's a talking head. He's a guy on. This actually came May the 10th, just before we started this class. He sent this letter to me. I'm sure he sent it to millions of others, but it came to me. It said, according to MarketWatch.com, as of 2020, last year, the total median retirement savings account for households 65 to 74, taking a few years up, is only $164,000. They're starting to dip into it, may have a need to get into that as well. According to the 4% rule, listen to this, according to the 4% rule, you need around $1 million invested just to have $40,000 annual retirement income. In other words, if you're used to living on and have to live on $40,000 a year, you need to have at least $1 million in your investment accounts to be able to fund that $40,000 a year without eating into your principal to continue to give you that $40,000 every year. Does that make sense? I'm pointing up there. Look at those numbers. We're woefully behind, woefully behind. The average contribution percentage in those same age groups, 40 to 49, roughly 9%, 10.5% in that next age group, 50 to 59. Not a whole lot of money when you look at the numbers of where we're at in balances, average balances. Now, what's keeping people from that?
Started late, maybe.
And these are the right answers, right? Absolutely right answers. Started late, if you didn't hear that. Debt. Don't see the need. Retirement, I'm 20 years old. I'm 25 years old. That's still 40 years down the road. Yeah, I remember sitting in, my mom and dad bought a brand new Grand Prix in 1971. I was, 9 years old? About 12 years old, I started, well, not quite that old. About 12 years old, I started spending the summers with my grandfather on the farm, and I was able to drive his truck, and I was able to drive tractors. My mom just recently found this out and had a fit, but he's gone. But doing all that stuff as a young guy. But I remember when we were at home, I'd sit in that Grand Prix in the car on the street, act like I was driving. I'm like, Lord, I'll die before I'm 16. I'll never make it to be 16 years old. I'll never be able to get my driver's license. I will die. It's that far in advance. Now, 42 years later, it happens just like that. And when you're not putting that money away, when you're not preparing for it, it doesn't grow. Time flies. There we go. This is pretty much the same thing, but it's from a different source to give you these numbers. Again, those averages balances between $93,400 and $160,000. Contribution rates are pretty much similar. This is from Investopedia.com. You think about that. Pitifully. Well, who's going to take care of your retirement? Social Security? The United States government? What are we banking on? Or maybe we're going to have to work. I think I shared with you a story several weeks ago about a client that I had who refinanced. Maybe I did. Maybe I need to share this story with you again. They had a bunch of debt a couple years ago, and I tried my best to talk them out of refinancing. And I couldn't do it. And they came to my office just days before they were getting ready to sign the deal to refinance their house. Now, they were right in their early 60s at the time. And they said, we're going to give you one more chance to talk us out of this. And I said, well, let me do it this way. I said, what year did you buy the house? This was 2019. No, yeah, 2019. They said, we bought the house in 1991. I said, well, why in the world would you refinance? You've only got a year and a half or so left, 2 years max to be able to pay that off. She's like, no, we got like 26 years left. And like you just, wait a minute. You bought it in 1991, so 2001, 2011, yeah, 2021, 30 years. Oh, well, we've refinanced multiple times. Well, as I said that and she's spitting that out of the corner of my eye, I saw him, his eyes were just, oh my gosh, it clicked, right? The problem was they keep reoccurring debt and they refinance to roll that debt back into their mortgage, okay? Not investing, they're just continuing to spend on debt and continuing to roll it in. I found out this week they did it again in May. I didn't know anything about it. I'm like, for what? They picked up one other debt since they'd done this and they wanted to get rid of that debt, refinanced again, started the clock rolling over again. Who's going to take care of that house payment? No retirement. Government? Maybe. Probably not. The question is, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing for yours? Do you realize that 30% of employees have a 401k loan? We're going to talk more about a 401k in a minute, but look at a 401k loan. Anybody ever had a 401k loan? You know what qualifies me to talk to you about this stuff? I've been there and done it, made the mistakes, worked out of that, have coached many people to get out of this mess, and I can talk about it. The only thing I haven't had was student loans. Thankfully, General Electric took care of that and avoided that. 30%, that's almost 1/3 of employees have a 401k loan. With some of the stuff we talked about a couple of weeks ago or a couple of lessons ago, we owe more today on student loans than we owe on credit cards. Student loans are a mess. And if you look, the talk in our country is, well, let's just forgive them. I don't want to be around when that happens. I don't want to be invested in anything when that happens as well. Some more numbers here. Again, this comes from studenthero.com, creditcards.com. 1.7 trillion, 45 million loans, student loans, 819 billion in credit cards. So why are we not investing in the stock market? Why are we not putting more in those investments that are making money for us? Let's go back to that. Interest that we earn is a interest that we pay is penalty. That's one of the reasons why. Retirement's coming. Retirement's coming. Like it or not, wanting it or not, it's coming. Be prepared. Financially, be prepared. So again, how long is your runway? How long do you have to be able to make the changes to be able to prepare you for retirement? I meet a lot of people in churches who are concerned about participating in the stock market and investments and all this. Is it wise to be able to do that? You know what? Let me ask you this question. If you made a lot of money in that and you had that 1 million or 2 million or 8 million in investments, what could you do financially if God told you to do something? Compared to Current state, oh, well, I don't know. You know, I got 3 car payments, big house payment, all those credit cards. I really can't do that. You know some of the missionaries that I know. I see your prayer cards out there. Constantly, those guys constantly begging for, I thought Jerry Falwell was the only one to beg for money all the time, but these guys are just as bad. Jason Holt and some of those guys down in Chile. And stuff. I watched Jason when he was a teenager growing up, so I'll make fun of him. All right, the truth is what they're doing is they're investing in the lives of people in those areas where they're ministering at. And you know what, we can have a part of that, but we can't because we're broke. And as we get into where we're not earning as much in income, and those things that we should have been doing when we had the income coming in that's going to pay us back later prevents us now from being able to be a part of it at that point as well. What can we do to further the kingdom? There's a lot of choices when it comes to retirement accounts. And many of these you may know about, maybe some of them you don't. I want to walk down through each one, just kind of give you a description of what those are. Anybody know what a 401k is? Anybody have a 401k with their employer? Anybody have a 401k opportunity that you're not participating in? 401k is typically a corporation, a business that has a retirement plan that you personally fund from your earnings. And in many cases, but they're not required to, a company will match up to a certain percentage of the percentage that you will put in. It's what we call encouraged retirement savings. It used to be, for some of us in here that got a few more gray hairs, it used to be a pension plan that we had. When I graduated high school, the thing was you went out, you got a job when you graduated high school, you worked there for 30 some years, they gave you a gold watch, and you got a pension for the rest of your life. And that was the case with probably 80% of the companies in America. That kind of changed through the late 80s and the early 90s, and now it's 80%, probably 85 to 90% of the companies do not have any type of pension. Most big companies that have them have got a hybrid model where some of the older employees have it, some of the newer ones are not. It's forced upon you. If you're going to have a retirement, it's up to you to be able to do that. But oh, my goodness, we're in debt. We're taking on more than we can afford, so we can't invest in our own retirement. 401k. What about a 403b? Anybody here have a 403b? So my guess is you're in the health, education, or you're a minister. I'm going to take that last one off the table because I don't think you are, all right? But those three opportunities you have there to be able to invest, it's just like a 401k, but it's specific niche for those type of employees. Healthcare, education, or ministry, okay? To be able to do that. Now, your pastor, by definition, could have a 403b if you guys set it up. More than likely would not because there's other options. They can be expensive. 457, pretty much the same thing, except it's for government workers. Typically, the only ones I've ever seen use them are government workers. Sometimes education, who in a lot of cases, government, you would call that, but police departments, road and bridges, government organizations to be able to use it. 457. All those numbers there, don't let them confuse you. You know what those are? The IRS code is a stack of paper about that tall. And each one of those sections in there is labeled. Section 401, paragraph K, talks about corporate retirement accounts. 403B is another one, 457, and there's some other ones as well. A traditional IRA, do you know what that is? Anybody? No? Again, that 401k, 403b, 457, those are corporate things where you can put pre-tax money from your paycheck on a regular paycheck basis into those accounts, may or may not be matched, invest in the options they give you to invest in. You do, again, see the pre-tax savings on those. With the traditional IRA, those are dollars that you put in after you get paid, okay? Traditional IRAs, it's just an individual retirement account. It's actually an individual retirement arrangement, I think is the way it's coded in the IRS code. But individual retirement account. In those cases, you're allowed to put in a certain amount each year. I want to say it's $6,000 for this year. If you're over age 50, you can put in $1,000 more, so $7,000 is what they call catch-up going forward there every year, so long as you have at least that much in earned income. When you put that money in, the amount that you put in, you're able to take off your taxes, so it's considered pre-tax, but it's money that you've already paid taxes on. You would get that back when you file your taxes for the next year, or at the next year, the next spring. A Roth IRA. Anybody know what a Roth IRA is?
Post-tax.
Post-tax. It's pretty much the same thing we just talked about, with the limits on how much you can put in there each year, right? You have to have that earned income to be able to do that, but it's money that you're putting in after you've been paid, much like a traditional IRA, but there's no tax benefit until you start to take it out. You don't even have to take it out. Everything that money earns, when it's in that Roth IRA, comes out totally tax-free. You're paying taxes at today's rate, and you're reaping the benefit of everything it grows is not taxed yet. All right, it's the government. Remember that. Okay. Now, with a 401k, 403b, 457, a traditional IRA, all those things you haven't paid taxes on. So it used to be age 70 and a half. With new tax law changes a couple of years ago, the Trump administration and Congress, that changed to 72 and a half. At age 72 and a half, you have to take out what they call an RMD, required minimum distribution. You haven't paid any taxes on this. And we don't know when you're going to get around to taking money out, so we need you to take out a certain percentage. There's a calculation that you and your brokerage firm would go through, and you have to take that distribution every year for that money so you can pay taxes on that. Does that make sense? With the Roth IRA, you never have to take it out. Never. You can leave that for family members down the road. If you never spend it, you can do that as well. A Roth 401k, much like the 401k, with the Roth piece of where you're paying taxes on it while it's still in your paycheck, it's going into that through the corporate plan to be able to, that's a relatively new piece of that, okay? Do all those make sense? Any questions on those? That next one, SEP. Anybody know what that stands for? A simplified employee pension plan. What that is small business owner. If you're a small business owner, you're not going to have a 401k. You're going to have a SEP, simplified employee pension plan. A lot of times they don't even put the last P on there, a SEP, right? In my business, I can have, in fact, I have a SEP to where I can put regular contributions in there. Being the business owner, you determine on how that, who's involved in that and how much and percentages and all that good stuff. There's some formulas with that. But it's just like a 401k for small business owners. And then you can get into taxable accounts. Okay, and there's a variety of different accounts that you've got. I just hit the big ones here. But a taxable account, you know what that is? Just a regular investment account that you're going to pay taxes on an annual basis on all your gains in that, and you're going to benefit from the losses if you have those as well. I don't necessarily encourage that because you do want it to grow, okay? But it's something you're going to do every year and reaping the byproduct of that. Any questions on any of those? Those are accounts that you could have just about anywhere, okay? Bank of America has those. What are they today? Truist. All these big banks. Is Wachovia still in existence? No. Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo. They change names so often I kind of forget them. SunTrust is Truist. Regions, that's who I'm thinking of. All these banks, credit unions, they all have this investment piece. But you know what they really are? They're banks. They want you to come put your money in there so it's like a full service thing. You know, we got your investments, we got your checking account, we got your savings account, we got your credit cards, we got all this stuff. We got you hooked. It's known as stickiness, all right, in the banking world. The point is, what you really need to do when you're investing is go with an investment firm, not a bank. And so you've got TD Ameritrade, Schwab, who just merged. They're actually still under two names, but they're merging. There's truly Schwab. They're just going through the branding stuff over the next 2 or 3 years. Fidelity, E-Trade. Who knows some others? Muriel Siebert. I'm throwing some names out there. Merrill Lynch. More of an expensive one, but you're exactly right. Salomon Smith Barney. There's a bunch of them out there to be able to do it. But your discount brokerage firms, the TD Ameritrade, Schwab, Fidelity, those companies, those are where a lot of people are moving to in those. Discount trades, all that good stuff. You can have any of those accounts, there may be more. You can have some for your children, all right? If you want to do that, it'd be a joint custody thing or joint guardianship thing that you'd be monitoring that to be able to do that. You could do that if they were earning income, something you want to do. You could set up a Roth IRA. If they were out cutting grass, making $500 a year, they could take that $500 a year and put it in a Roth IRA. I'll show you a little bit about that here in just a minute. Those are different type of accounts that you can have. But inside those accounts, picture with me if you would. Might have to use that money to be able to show this, because this is one of the things I forgot was a bucket. Here's your account. Your 401k, your SEP, your taxable account, whatever it may be. It's here, that's your account. As you're getting money, you're putting money into that account so you can invest in different things inside that account. We're going to get into these and break them down and talk about a little one. But that first one, money market. Anybody know what a money market is? You probably do. What do you think it is?
Savings account.
Savings account. It's exactly what it is. It's a savings account. It's like a holding account when you have an investment account. A lot of people when I meet, I'm asking, do you have any investments? Yeah, well, I don't really know what I've got it invested in. So they bring their thing in. Well, it's in nothing but a money market. It's not growing. It's not doing anything because they're not paying anything. I think I told you we sold our house and we closed this week, and the money from that we put into a money market account at the bank. Just happened to be one of those things that they're paying a little bit more interest for 90 days to be able to put that money in there. I'm hoping the Lord doesn't let us leave it in there for 90 days. He gives us a house. But the point is, put that money in a money market at a bank. Investment firms have money markets. Those savings accounts is where you're putting the money into that, and then it's up to you to take it out of that and invest it in some of the other options that you see. They're like single stocks. Anybody know a good stock that you like? Not to invest in, because I said we don't do that, but you like a particular stock. Apple. Lady after my own heart. Absolutely. I'm an Apple guy. Apple. They make good iPhones and tablets and things. I just letting you just just teasing. Actually, truly, I like Apple. I had Jason Holt. Jason Holt's a big reason why I'm an Apple guy. I changed to Apple about 11 years ago. Anybody know Austin Gardner? His pastor? And I was in Chicago, my wife and I, and we had I was on Twitter, walked into the Apple store. It was a cool Apple store. Anybody ever been to the Apple store in Chicago? It's glass, everything. Steps, everything. It's pretty cool to do this. And I thought, man, this is cool. Took some pictures. I no sooner got outside and Austin Gardner's called me, what are you doing at the Apple store? What are you buying? Blah, 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 blah. Anyway, Jason Holt got after that, and he encouraged me to buy an Apple because they were expensive. I was having trouble pulling the trigger on this thing. But he talked me into it. I love it. Everything just works together. I love Apple products. I love Apple. What's another good stock? Not necessarily a good stock to go buy. It's not what I'm saying, but a good stock, something that you think favorably of.
Delta.
Amazon, Delta, Microsoft, Coke, Oh, you're in the big stuff, aren't you? Yeah, wow, that's.
I have 3 in Microsoft.
You have what?
My uncle bought me 3 stocks in Microsoft.
3 shares? Okay.
When I was 3.
Good. So you see, you're a stockholder. Berkshire Hathaway, last time I looked, I think it was like $40,000 a share. That's Warren Buffett stuff. They're a holding company with a bunch of different other companies. And so, yeah, look it up, Berkshire Hathaway. Look at those numbers and, yeah, try to go to sleep on those tonight. It's an individual stock, all right? When you've got an individual stock, you mentioned some of them here. You mentioned a good one, Delta. Why Delta right now? Not necessarily a good stock.
Nobody's coming back from a pandemic.
Yeah. What else? Fuel prices tend to be a little bit expensive, right? And so when you look, those two things have hurt Delta. How much did Delta lose over the last 15 months? Staggering numbers. If you're a shareholder at Delta, I bet you didn't sleep real good, especially if you were a major shareholder, all right? Because you don't know when this is going to end.
The Berkshire Hathaway is $422,000.
See, I was giving you 10% of the price. I didn't want to scare you. That's per share? Yeah. I hadn't looked at it in a long time. Afraid to look at it, all right? $400,000 a share? You can buy fractions of shares, but there's no way I'd be able to do that. Anyways, when you've got a single stock, a single company, can you see why that would be a very high risk? See, Delta may be flying high, no pun intended, on the stock market. And then all of a sudden you had Corona hit. Coming out of Corona, you've had high fuel prices. You got all the uncertainty going on in the world, and at the same time with Corona, when you came back, you couldn't fill every seat. You were having to fill every other seat. You see what I'm saying? That stock could have went down. Typically, you will have generally lower returns with one individual stock than you do with a group of stock. Here's the thing. When you've got a dividend, you're getting income from the company that increases typically every year based upon their performance, and then the value of the stock as well. That's where the growth is in your investment there. So if you had 100 shares of Delta, anybody know what Delta's trading at? I thought you just rattled this stuff off. I think it's DAL is going to be the symbol for Delta, if I'm not mistaken. LUV for Southwest, APPPL for Apple. You can look some of those things up to see, but that'll show you what the share price is. I'm going to, what is it?
13,420 for Delta.
A share? That shouldn't be right.
I'm sorry, no, that's the different.
Okay.
Okay.
I was going to say, whoa, maybe I should, maybe I'm telling you wrong. Maybe I'm going to go out.
It's 42.
$42 a share, okay? And you can go back and you can see what it was with the year. But the point is, when you've got one thing like that, if something happens with Delta, it could be catastrophic in your retirement account, okay? You've always heard the old saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket, okay? I love Dave Ramsey's example when he talks about don't doing this. He said, what about Cracker Barrel? I mean, everything's going good at Cracker Barrel until somebody finds a hair in their biscuit, all right? And then the word starts to spread, and then Cracker Barrel stock starts falling, all right? Truthfully, with Cracker Barrel, I haven't looked at it, and I've got a gift card that I'm trying to use between now and the end of the month because they're starting to sell alcohol. And so I'm going to use my gift card so I don't patronize them anymore in their stores. So nothing to do with stocks there. You see what happens with a company stock, with a single stock? Bonds. Anybody know what a bond is? Think about that. The rich ruleth over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. Bondage. Bondage. Bond is a debt instrument, okay? A lot of companies, when they go borrow money, they will issue bonds. They'll say, hey, we're good for this over so many years. We'll be paying you a certain percentage. It's a very stable stock, but it doesn't really grow in value. It's more solid, more secure. You've got government bonds. You know, the city of Houston will issue bonds because they've got a new water project or something going on, or maybe they're trying to finance something else, whatever it may be, to do that. The state of Georgia would have bonds, government bonds, you know, municipalities, locales, counties, whatever, they always want to keep their bond rating up. So they can keep that bond rating up so they get more favorable interest rates, and more people will invest in them because their likelihood of them paying back is pretty significant, especially when they're the government, got their hand in your pocket. They're debt instruments. Their return varies based upon the price and the interest rate that you have agreed on with them. They'll typically issue a bond for a certain amount at a certain rate over so many years, and you can expect to get that return through those years until it matures at that date that you've agreed to, or they've issued that. Bonds also have mutual funds. We'll talk about that here in just a minute as well. Did I say mutual funds? Anybody know what a mutual fund is? Just what it says, exactly right. And so when you look there, what it is, it's money that you pool with other investors, okay? Each mutual fund is going to have an objective of what they're after. They may be small cap, they may be large cap, they may be international. We'll look at some of those here in just a minute. But they have an objective of what they're trying to do with their investments. And what it is, they get money from a group of investors who agree with that objective, that that's what they're trying to do, and that money that comes in, they take that money and they buy companies, those single stocks, remember what we're talking about? They buy stocks, maybe bonds, they buy a variety of different things in there, and they watch those things increase in value so that the money that they put in there, it's invested thing, those things grow up in value, and there's no specific one stock, one security that they're after. Typically, mutual funds will invest in somewhere between 40 and 250 different companies. So if Cracker Barrel gets a hair in their biscuit and they fall on some hard times, typically there's other companies and other stocks in there that balance it out and continue to grow. Same thing with Delta. If they run into problems with fuel prices or ridership, whatever it may be of what they're doing, and their stock starts to go down, typically they balance that out, and the overall investment objective is to grow in those. They take those, and without getting really too specific, they take the amount of shares that they've got in each company and what they do at the end of each day, and they look at those, and they divide it up against the number of mutual fund shares that they have, and that's where that value goes up and down. They call that an NAV, the net asset value. You can see that at the end of every trading day as well, based upon what those stocks do. Typically, mutual fund prices will come out in a couple hours, maybe 3 hours after the stock market closes, after they run all those numbers and see where they're at to be able to do that. That's where your things go up and down. Typically with a mutual fund, based upon what what the mutual fund does with those companies that they've invested in, those stocks that they've invested in, typically quarterly, semi-annually, annually worst case, they will pay out a dividend or report their losses. And what that does is they lower the price net asset value, and you reap that in a dollar amount. If you're reinvested in your account, that money goes in to buy more shares at a lower rate, and they continue to go up, okay? The nice thing about a mutual fund is you've got a manager and typically a team of managers that are working to fulfill that objective. So while you've done some research and you've determined that this mutual fund or these mutual funds are the things that you want to invest in, you can sit back based upon their long track record that you researched before you invested and realize that this group is really working to perform the objective that that mutual fund has. Is that making sense? Okay? They're actually doing that to where you don't have to sit and watch everything that they're invested on a daily basis and seeing what's happened. Hey, should we buy this, selling this, whatever the case may be? You're investing in that group to be able to do that, and they're bringing the returns there. A lot of different types of mutual funds are available to invest in. I mentioned some as I was going down there, didn't mean to, but you've got bond funds, fixed and semi-bond funds, fixed and semi-fixed bond funds. Those dots are kind of messed up. Remember the conversion thing that I was telling you about, what I give and what that program does? You've got balanced stocks. A balanced fund is a stock and bond. In other words, you've got stocks in there and bonds. Remember that I told you those bonds are more stable, not a huge return, but they've got some stocks in there as well. That'd be known as a balanced fund. You've got growth and income, which is typically large capital stocks. Some big companies, we mentioned those in here, like Delta Airlines, Apple, Johnson & Johnson, Microsoft, General Electric, IBM, big companies like that, large capital, large net worth companies, large cap. Below that, you've got growth, which are more mid area. I hate to pick on Cracker Barrel, but they would be more of a mid cap, right? Maybe some other companies that are escaping me right now, who that might be. Amazon and FedEx, I know they got distribution centers here around here as well. They're going to be more in those large caps, but smaller cap companies, as opposed to small cap companies. Your small startup type companies, which are very good in some returns and can be very bad in some of their returns. They may be up one day, down the next. Anybody like to ride roller coasters? That's what it's like to invest in small cap stocks, all right? And then the last group, typical ones, international funds, okay? I think there's some more that kind of fell off of there, but you've got things that are more specific and like precious metals, gold, silver, real estate, those type of things. Again, as you get into those more defined, more pigeonholed type of mutual funds, it's just like having a single stock. You know, if you're invested in real estate mutual funds, you're going to take a hit when real estate takes a hit, or precious metals, whatever it may be. Typically, your other mutual funds are more widely invested, and you don't see as much of a hit in those. The big thing about investing, and here's where I really wanted to get to, the big thing about investing, that word there, diversification. Do you know what that means? Spread it out. Spread it out. Don't invest in just a single stock or some single stocks. Don't invest in one mutual fund. The book of Ecclesiastes talks about spreading out because you don't know what good or bad is upon the earth. You don't know what's going to happen. Nobody knows what's going to happen. If we spread that out, we lessen the risk of this stuff tanking on us, but more general increase in value, again, over a long time. How long is your runway? Risk tolerance. Risk tolerance. Anybody know what a risk tolerance is?
How much risk are you willing to take?
How much risk you're able to take.
Exactly right. You know how I define it? What keeps you up at night? If you're going to invest in something and you're going to lay in bed and worry all night whether it's the right or wrong thing to do, probably not the right thing to invest in, okay? There are a lot of opportunities out on the web. You can do a search through Google or whatever and type in risk tolerance test. It'll run you through some things. Some of the brokerage firms, TD Ameritrade, Schwab, Fidelity, you can go on their sites and do a risk tolerance test, and it'll tell you some things that you may or may not want to do. I encourage you to do that. Don't be huge risk takers if that's not the way you're wired, right? It'll destroy you, okay? Slow and steady. Long-term approach, a long-term approach. We don't want to do anything short, okay? You don't want to do it. You don't want to be in trading up and down. You want a long-term approach. Remember, how long is your runway? Diversifying, spreading it out. Here's what I recommend. Putting at least 25% of your holdings in growth and income funds, another 25% in mid-cap funds, or what we would call growth funds, another 25% in aggressive funds, another 25% in international funds. Anybody know what international funds are? Yeah, they invest in things outside the United States. Absolutely, all right? Now you'll notice under that 25% aggressive funds, you guys can see that, 25% aggressive funds, it's got that little asterisk at the end. What you can't see is what it says down below. If your risk tolerance says that you can't handle that stuff, and whether you've got risk tolerance or not, that's pretty hefty, but you're getting up in age, you probably don't want to put that money at risk. It should be money that you could live without, that you could do that. And so instead of using aggressive funds, you might put it into more balanced funds where you've got that more stability, not a lot of growth, but you got steady growth of what you've got, just not big gaps in it, because aggressive funds can be up one day and down the next, and people looking for the tallest building to jump off of, okay? Diversify, spread it out, okay? Research your investments. Take your time. I remember back in, I think it was 2004, 5, somewhere in that area right there. I was able to go spend the weekend with Dave Ramsey and his team talking about just investments. I never will forget I was sick as a dog sitting in a corner. I was just sick, but I wanted to be a part of this. And from all that I learned there, I learned that I was totally structured wrong in my investment accounts. And so I came back and looked at everything, made some decisions on to sell some things, and worked through the company that I was doing at the time was Ameritrade, or actually TD Waterhouse, and they were starting to merge with Ameritrade. And I went in and I sold just about everything that I had in single stocks, piled up a bunch of cash, and then I started my research that I'm telling you guys to do. And that was February was that class, late February of that year. I bought our very first mutual fund around Memorial Day. So what is that, 3 months? It took me 3 months to really do the research, to feel comfortable, to assess my risk tolerance, to look at, and to really say, okay, I'm ready to pull the trigger on this to be able to put that in there. And we did. And it was probably 2 or 3 more months before I did another one. It took several months to be able to do it. What I'm saying is you don't want to run home today, look at the Wall Street Journal and go invest tomorrow. Take your time. Take your time. Read the stuff. Look on the internet, financial magazines and websites. Read the prospectus of an individual, or the objective and prospectus of an individual mutual fund, making sure that you line up with what they're doing. Look at their track record of what they've done, and don't get something that's relatively new, okay? When you look at these financial magazines and websites, do it with a grain of salt. They're typically advertisements. Kiplinger's, Money Magazine, they're advertisements for this. Hey, we got the latest and greatest mutual fund. It's been averaging about 13%. Well, when you really look at that, yeah, it's been averaging 13% for the last 3 weeks, but over the last 10 years, it's been averaging -3%, okay? So you really got to look and see what you're doing there. Look for mutual funds that have a good long-term track record. And the longer you can go back with solid numbers of rates of return, annual rate of return, that's what's going to help you realize that they've been through a lot of things over the last 80 years. Anybody know what's happened in the last 80 years? A bunch of stuff. Had a presidential assassination, another one attempted. How many ups and downs and recessions in the economy, wars, natural disasters, all that stuff's happened. And yet this mutual fund's returning on average 12.5%. Might be something that worth of an interest there that you might want to study some more and kind of drill down and put some money in to be able to do that. Do your research. I want to share this with you. Kayla and Morgan. They happen to be both my daughters, okay? And I wanted to make sure this got on there, and it did. Some of the things I put on over the last couple of weeks didn't, so I took a picture of this, so it's not as pretty as it could be. By the way, this is an example. This is not real. Both of them would love it if it was real. But Kayla's the oldest one. Morgan is my middle child. Micah, my son, lives over here in Athens, and he wasn't old enough for me to put this at the time. But I use this as an example to show why we should start early, okay? They are totally different, Kayla and Morgan. Kayla is OCD, okay? I was working with a missionary's daughter yesterday as a client, and she was doing some stuff. And I said, you're OCD, aren't you? I'm not OCD. By virtue of the way you answer that, you're OCD, all right? I know that, all right? Nothing wrong with it, you just are. Kayla's OCD. Our pastor used to come to our house, and he'd go in a room when she wasn't there, and he'd jump up and down on her bed, just sitting on, jumping up and down. His wife said, what are you doing? He said, I want her to see that I was here. She'll know the air's been disturbed. She'll see that bed messed up. She's OCD, and she would. She'd get all upset. Morgan, just the opposite. When Morgan moved out and we rearranged some furniture, we had to go get a hefty bag. I mean, there was all kinds of trash behind that dresser and all that. That was just Morgan, just two totally opposite girls from the same family. You got kids, you know what I'm talking about. But in this example, Kayla decided when she was 19 years old, she's going to put $2,000. She got some babysitting jobs. She's been working at McDonald's or wherever the case. My kids would flip out if she just knew I heard me say working at McDonald's. They thought that was downgrade McDonald's. But anyway, $2,000 a year. She just said, you know what, I'm going to put $2,000 away in the stock market. Just invest it. I think the average rate of return in my example here is 10%, $2,200. So 10% a year. She put $2,000 there. Morgan's like, are you crazy? Do you know what you could do with $2,000 a year? Do you know how many cheeseburgers you could buy with that? Do you know how many movies you could go to? Do you know what kind of clothes you can buy with $2,000? And you're going to put it in the stock market? How crazy are you? Guess, well, you know, I'm just going to do it, just see what happens. I've heard it's something good to do. I'm going to just do it. $2,000. I can live without it. And she did that for the next 8 years. Morgan, on the other hand, spent it. Hole in her pocket, so she had to go buy more clothes, all right, to be able to do that. Didn't do a thing. But they got together a few years down the road. Both of them lived their own lives. They went to lunch one day and they were talking to this and that. And finally Morgan brought up, Kayla, how you doing on that investment stuff that you started so many years ago? Because I think that's crazy. And Kayla said, well, I did it for about 8 years and things got crazy around the house and didn't have necessarily the 2,000. We were buying a house. We were doing some other things. And I just haven't put anything in there anymore. But that $2,000 that I was putting in every year for 8 years has grown to about $27,000. Put in $16,000 and never put in another penny, right, in this example. On the other hand, Morgan's like, you've got to be kidding. You put in $16,000 and right now it's about almost $27,000. Kayla's like, yeah, I have no idea why I did that. I just put in some investments and it did that. Morgan got to thinking over the next couple of years and said, you know, I'm going to start that. And so at age 28, Morgan started putting those $2,000 a year. And she did that all the way up to the time that she was 65 years old. $78,000 Morgan put in there. Kayla's $16,000 that she only put in those first 8 years grew to be, there it is, $1.186 million. Morgan went to age 65 and she had $800,000. Nothing to sneeze at. But do you see the gap? $250,000 gap between the two, and all it was that $16,000 that Kayla did when she started early. Early. Wasn't worried about the car, car payment. Wasn't worried about new clothes. Wasn't worried about this. Wasn't worried about that. She was saying, I'm going to invest that stuff. Make sense? My point is this: start early, stay steady, keep doing this, and it'll grow on you. Back in 1978, maybe 79, I remember this. My dad had a Datsun truck. Anybody remember a Datsun? Yeah. You didn't have to worry about that thing. You know, if you had a bunch of people at the house and it was the last car in, you didn't have to worry about going and getting the keys. Just a couple guys go out there and lift that thing, set it in the yard, back the other cars out. It was just, you know, you put your hand through it with a fist. He loved that truck. He did. I remember one day he brought this box home. He said, come help me carry this thing in. I'm telling you what, it took 4 of us to carry it. We got that thing in the kitchen and we opened it up and it was a microwave. It was just like we hit the jackpot. Anybody remember those early microwaves? They weighed 1.5 million pounds. They take up the whole counter in the kitchen, but you had a microwave. And if I'm not mistaken, he probably got it at Sears. You got everything at Sears, right? Remember those little white credit cards? One of my clients yesterday, or Thursday told me that they have a Sears credit card. So where in the world are you going to Sears at? They may have. I don't remember that aspect. They very well, that, when you said that, yeah, that might have been it. But that thing was huge. And I don't even remember what all Mom made in that thing through the years. And as a young teenager, you're just eating whatever's in front of you. But I know one time she made a roast in there. And that thing cooked a roast probably in 5-8 minutes. Mom worked at the bank, my dad worked at the post office, we're all doing this stuff. So it was very convenient to come home and make dinner, throw a roast in there, cook it for about 5 to 7 minutes and eat that that roast. Anybody ever had a roast in the microwave? They're eatable. Edible, I think is the right way you pronounce that. They're edible, right? If you're hungry, nothing else to eat, you know, microwave roast, ramen noodles. Oh, give me the roast, okay? But how many of you have ever had a roast in a crock pot? Oh, I love it. Well, let me rephrase it. I don't necessarily love it. If I come home, lunchtime or something, and my wife's put a roast in there, she typically puts some potatoes, some carrots, and those peppers, perconi peppers? Is that what you call it? Pepperconi? I don't even know how you pronounce it, but somebody gave her the recipe. You put those things in there, and that puppy just sits there and cooks all day long. And I walk in that door at lunchtime to come get a bologna sandwich. You hit that door, it's like, whoo. And it's only halfway cooked. But that crock pot, and it cooks all day. And when you get it out that night, somebody going to McDonald's when you get out of here, aren't you? Yeah. And you're going to get a roast, I'll guarantee that, right? My mouth's watering too. I did that, I was on, back in January, I was at a church down in Decatur. We were doing this same thing in a Zoom call. And I did this very same example. And the pastor's like, he's waving his hands and I'm like, okay. And I unmuted him. He said, don't do it. We're all fasting this month. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. So I said, I'm already into it. I got to do that. But how many of you ever ate that roast coming out of that crock pot? You don't need a knife. Just cut it. Melts in your mouth. Compare that to the roast that you had in the microwave. You see what I'm talking about? There's a difference in your investing, trying to play some catch up, trying to do it now because you look at your runway, you don't have that much of a runway, versus putting it in a crock pot and letting that puppy cook all day. It's a big difference. My mouth's watering. How many ever get the peppers at Costco, the stuffed peppers? Anybody ever had those? Oh, you got to get out of here. Get out. Enjoy life sometime. Go to crock pot and get those 6 peppers, okay? My mouth's watering. My wife made those the other day. She puts 3 in a crock pot and turns them on low when she goes to work. And you come home and they just fall apart. And I don't even like stuffed peppers. I wouldn't eat them when I was a kid, all right? Crock pot. Remember that. I'm telling you this to have fun with it, but at the same time to paint a picture to simply say the crock pot approach to investing. Somebody's telling you they're going to make a lot of money in crypto by buying and selling. Be careful. Okay? Somebody going to tell you they're making a lot of money in whatever investment, buying and selling. Be careful. Long-term crockpot approach is what you're going to do for investing. How do you get started? You do it. You do it. Again, we want to do it the right way. That first thing is get $1,000 in our emergency fund. The next thing we want to get our debt paid off. The next thing we want to build that true emergency fund. 3 to 6 months of our living expenses. And once we've got that, now let's getting into investing. And I encourage you to work up to where you're putting at least 15% of your annual income by paycheck, monthly, annual, however you want to measure it, into your investment account, and not just putting it into that money market, but putting it in there to invest and finding the right things that you should be investing on, doing your research, good long-term things, and then steady is the approach. And if you can do more than 15%, bless your heart, do it, okay? Steady, continue. Remember Kayla, all right? Early. Remember Morgan? Nothing. More importantly, remember the results, all right? Steady is the approach. Consistent. Get started, steady, consistent approach in investing. Don't be a gambler. That's not what we're talking about. We're not being gambling. We're looking at companies that are doing, some of you are wearing stuff in here, and you mentioned Apple, all right? You go and Charles Payne tells a story. People say, yeah, you know, I know you bet. I don't have any idea what to invest in. They got all these Nike clothes on and Adidas shoes and things like. You like those? And they're like, oh yeah, man, they're great. You ever thought about investing in them? If you're so hip on Nike, you know, Look at who's investing in Nike. Is it a good approach? Is it a bad approach? Look at some of the things you're doing. Apple, all right, Microsoft, some of those companies that are out there that are doing well, invest in them, but not necessarily as a single stock. You can actually research and find what mutual funds think favorably of them as well. Find those mutual funds. There's several different ways to research. The point is, do it, get started, be steady, and consistent. Okay? What kind of questions, if any? I don't believe in it, but I may buy a lottery ticket. I started at 6 and ended at 7. How about that? No, I'm not buying a lottery. Don't do that. I'm teasing. Completely teasing, all right? Any questions at all?
If you have a company 401k, are they automatically diversifying the stock? Like, is Fidelity automatically putting in a whole bunch of different things?
Not necessarily. So are you saying you work for Fidelity
No.
in your
that's
example?
Who manages the company?
That's who, no. What you're doing when you're working for a company and Fidelity actually provides that service to your company for the 401k, you're putting a percentage in there, but they give you investment choices to put that money into. So as long as you're putting it in, if you haven't selected where those are typically going into that money market equivalent in the Fidelity account, but they typically give you somewhere, most 401k programs that companies sell, investment companies sell, Fidelity, T. Rowe Price, Vanguard, they sell to those companies. They typically give you somewhere between 8 and 20 different investment choices. Not always the best, but they're investment choices. When I say not always the best, if you were doing it on your own outside there, you got the whole world to invest in. Okay, so you want to make sure that you're investing. Great question. I worked for a company called Convergys at AT&T, actually at Singular at the time. And when I left there, I went back to have lunch with Mark one day. I'll just mention Mark. And we're driving to lunch. I said, well, Mark, how's your 401k doing? Oh, man, I've stopped putting money in there. Single guy. I'm like, I know what you make. Why are you not putting money? Oh, he said, it's like putting money in a black hole. I said, well, what are you investing in? He said, I don't know. I said, we've only got a list of things here that you can invest in. Which ones are you doing? Oh, man, I don't have a clue. Well, no wonder it's a black hole. You got to look at your options to see what those are. Make sure, again, doing the same kind of research. What's the best thing to put those things in? Again, weighted distribution, you can do that as well. They typically have growth in income, aggressive bonds. They typically got that wide spectrum, sometimes even the company stock. Okay? And I don't say there's anything wrong with the company stock, just don't put everything in that company stock. Put a small percentage in there if you want to. Does that answer your question? Somebody else? Nothing. Okay, anybody got any hot stock tips for me? I'll take those offline. Actually, and we'll close with this. My mom's trying to sell some rental property, and I called a lady who's a friend of my mom's, and we was talking. She gave me this hot stock tip in that area. I'm like, wow, I need to look at that. So I am looking at that to see, but I'm not rushing out to do that. But I'm actually looking to see what mutual funds have this company, what they're saying about this particular company. Do they share the same perspective that this lady does of what's going on to be able to do that? You can do that all the time. I'm not saying you don't do that. What I'm saying is do your research. I was joking about the lottery. If you don't do your research, it's the very same thing as trying to buy a lottery ticket. Okay? You're gambling. That's not what you're wanting to do. You're wanting to invest. You're wanting to be a part of what a company's doing, what they're doing successful, and participate in that. Okay? Any other questions at all? If not, let's be dismissed in a word of prayer. All right? Father, thank you, Lord, for this time that you've allowed us to gather. And Father, I pray that you'd help us as we learn from week to week how to be better stewards with what you're giving us and how to take that money, as we talked about tonight, and be able to grow that to further your kingdom, that we might be better stewards again for what may be happening down the road. I pray that you would watch over us, protect us, and continue to provide for our needs. Thank you again for the opportunity to be here today, and keep us safe as we go our own ways tonight. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you all for being here. 2 more lessons for sure, all right? Next week, I think we're talking insurance next week. Then the next one's going to be a fun one, relationships. Yeah.